Ladies and gentlemen,
I like to describe myself.
what is up? We got ourselves
No idiot.
a new podcast, and I've been postponing just getting these out on my YouTube, but I will because of some audio issues. So, Carl, I hope you get your Blue Yeti like yesterday. Either way,
Tomorrow.
I'm gonna try and get these podcasts still running. Hopefully people won't mind that much about the audio quality here and there, but we got some massive things to share. Last week we had me and Karu touch upon some assassin subjects where I thought, on a general note, that assassins really lost their place within this game, at least on the PvP side of things. And I thought about several things which I thought was going to be interesting. So the discussion was as followed. So if you would have to put up a roster where you could simply pick several characters and you could say, okay, hero index, and you go to assassins. If you go to the PvP side of things, now, Carl, which assassin would you say would be top tier out of all
For
of them?
PvP, currently I'd say between Tanya and Ezekiel are the two top.
Okay, and why?
Because Ezekiel has an insta jump and enough AoE that he can cleave the entirety of where the front line is.
Okay.
Tanya doesn't do it as quick, but when she does eventually do it, she nukes everything.
So, if we boil that down, we're talking about speed, or we're talking about immunity, right? And
More or
that
less.
makes it seem like that makes these characters really good. But then the real question is, what offsets these two characters from, let's say, a Nyla? Because I've been in this discussion for way too long and I got way too hype about some things, and I had some ideas to fix this. But Roy has, well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a jump, but a displacement of sort. We got Epis having a jump, Reyna, I don't know if that's a real jump. We got Fluss having a jump, Tanya jumps, Ezekiel jumps, Urzi just stands there. Lodia does have a jump, technically. Miriam, well, she has a displacement, but doesn't really jump to the back line, which automatically puts her in a disadvantage. Naya has a jump, Caber's a jump, Grimri, Rapine, and Gladi. So, Grimri doesn't have a jump, so about 80 to 90% are having jumps.
Mm-hmm.
They could all be built fast, right?
Yes, they can.
But why aren't we seeing more assassins?
Because of the fact that even though they can jump, with how AoE based and just cleave based meta is right now, they're getting hit anyway.
Yes.
Like, yes, they're jumping to the highest attack, but in some cases, the person getting attacked immediately just goes poop. Tamahome pointed out the undispellable shields, the fact that Scarlet just does what she does.
Yep.
There's nothing that assassins can do with Ginstat because their burst is either negated or just becomes unusable.
Yep.
That's why Ezekiel and Tanya are the only two that work right now. Tanya honestly has fallen off quite a bit since Scarlet, and so I barely see her. But Ezekiel still has what he has, which is the speed. Because of that, nothing gets to happen with the Scarlet or whatever yet, which means that there's a chance that Ezekiel still does something.
Yep.
But
So
then Shadhelm exists.
yeah, so a lot of things currently exist to make sure that these characters are not working. I'm gonna pose you a counter character that does the role that assassins are supposed to be doing. And that is Syria.
You're very right.
Because she does everything. Yo, Kingpix, thanks for the subscription, man. 9 months in a row. Thank you so much. So, this character initially is my idealization of an assassin. Is capable enough to get into people's backlines, fast enough, but she also makes sure that she survives. Because you can literally build nobody like Syria does, right? And let her do the assassin capacity.
She is the burst that assassins enjoy, and the jump out of the way speed that they need.
Yep.
As well as the lack of flimsiness.
Yep. Okay, Tech. Question to you, since you're pulling the Naya card, because I would say yes, you're right. But why doesn't Naya get picked as much as Syria does? Because as VZ is already saying, Naya's too slow. That's for one. Second of all, we don't have an absolute guarantee that Syria gets a jump or that Naya gets a jump, because you're not building her with her current mana on, or her mana requirements on, let's say, a perfume, where Syria gets to do that. And even if you get your Scarlet against you, you will get to move. You will always get to move.
It's because her burst skill is on such a low cooldown and such a low mana cost that there's a lot of reusability to it, even if it fails once.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Naya, if she doesn't get it to work, she's a sitting duck for like 20 seconds.
Yep.
On top of that, she has to regain her mana, not die, and on that point, they also can set up a lot more.
Yep. And just by mana gain alone, in which I believe this current meta is all about, if you can either cook somebody's mana, stun lock them at the start, you kill people. I think most of my matches have drastically dropped in terms of playtime. And that could be because I'm bad, but I think I can speak for the general population that most of the fights don't even exceed over 20 seconds. So that being said, if your characters die very fast, obviously that's nasty, but I would not feel there's any character that fills the role better than Syria does as an assassin. So then there's the question, why we even have an assassin bracket at all? Because I can literally see none of these characters being better by just simply saying, and that was the part of the equation as well, let's give him a similar buff of Flush. Because Flush received a buff where I thought to myself, he is going to cook some people. He is going to pinpoint a certain target. He's going to absolutely shred through them. And he is going to play so damn well. But I don't know about you, Carl. I'm asking you this question, even though I don't know if you have the knowledge of this. Why is this dude not flourishing?
Because of the fact that he's a specific counter to magic.
Yep.
We have 2 or 3 heroes that you see in PvP right now that are magic.
Mm-hmm.
Shamilla, who can just insta-burst, which makes Fuss less viable in those picks anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Lorraine, who Fuss actually does counter pretty well. And Yuria, again, who can, frankly, if you want, burst him down. On top of that, those DPSs are almost always picked with a secondary DPS. And with that secondary DPS, that can finish off Flush if the first DPS dies.
Yep. So, initially, I'm like, the whole buff did nothing for the dude. And he's not on levels of Ezekiel when it comes to speed, and Tanya in terms of being, let's say, immune for the first part, depending on what you're facing. So yes, she's situational, but she is more of a pressure pick than a Flush where I think, that's okay. I can just put up a Lucius, lock him down, be done with it. I can lower the dude's mana so he never gets to jump, or stun lock him, because the dude is gonna run maybe a Soul Spring Water or something else that might make him fast. But then again, he's not gonna do it for you.
And again, he's also not necessarily the most popular of character, which means that people aren't just building him because they want to. His one niche is something that isn't that necessary to prepare against, since there's so many other magical counters like Laius and Loden.
Yep.
In that case, why build a DPS that can do it when you can have 2 supports who honestly will fit the role better in most situations, since they also can do something else beyond just counter magic.
Okay.
Roland with his shields, Elias with her mana charge.
So, I think one of the biggest troubles that assassins currently face is they lost their identity to characters such as Syria. And you have your Nyla, which practically does the same. They got the same dodge perks as assassins do. And they got a fairly decent jump, and Nyla one-shots teams faster than any assassin in this current roster, right? So, knowing that these characters have lost their identity, I propose something that spiked up the chat so badly that I would like to perform this once again, and I hope people get just as hype as it is. Because, let's face it, if you look at the Transcendence page, there is one that nobody uses, Vital Detection. And the reason why I think most assassins face problems right now is because you cannot save them. And they shouldn't necessarily be saved. And judging by the lore time, Gundam already knows, damn spoiler, but we're not done with that yet. Here's the thing. If assassins, or judging by the lore part, assassins were there to make sure that high priority targets gets picked out and just get killed. Poison or what? Making sure there were no traces, but end of the trace was somebody would die, high priority whatsoever. What do assassins do in this game? Run up to your tanks! Yeah, that sounds like a fucking great idea. So, everybody's already against it. I don't give a damn, because I'm still gonna put it up, because there's so many things that we can do to make this stuff happen. Because let's face it, if you run up and there's a Scarlet waiting for you, there is a DLK waiting for you, there is a Rebel Claws waiting for you, there is a Lucikiel waiting for you, to then bust your nuts with a singular skill that will make sure that this entire roster does not get to move at all. Now that doesn't seem very assassin-like, does it? It's not smart in a way. And here's the thing. I would simply say we can devise a button, a Transcendence perk of sorts. And I've been thinking about this some more while I'm talking about this to make sure this comes across to people as something useful instead of something like, I don't want this. So here's my thing. We got this Vital Detection. We even got 2 bars over here, which nobody is using anyway. So the thing is, what if you get assassins to join people's backlines? So instead of them joining your front line, and Kara's already not liking this, but here's the thing. Because on the logistic side of things, if they would start out absolutely at their backline, everybody will clog them, and they will still kill your assassin 100%, right? But what if you get yourself a button such as the startup from Greenery, where you can say, I am going to join the fight now?
More tolerable already.
And let's say, since it sounds pretty broken, having your Gladi just bust up all of your priests, let's say there's a damage reduction coming with it, which means that you either upgrade his damage to make sure that that backline dies, which in turn makes his survivability way worse. But their positioning itself is then priority to make them and allow them to live more than they are doing now. Because you can still have your Demia pulling in characters, you still have your Lucius being able to lock them down even if they are in your backline. But it makes sure that they don't run into your DLK one-shots. And this way, Leo gets busted because he gets all the damage to his face. I don't want to see that dude one-shotting people ever again, even though I have one. It just allows, for one, Gladi gets to live. That's one. We get Reyna being able to bust people up on backlines, which allows her to PvP. Epis being in your backline is never good. Miriam standing somewhere where she totally shouldn't even be, standing at people's backline, just throwing shurikens or kunais at people's faces. That seems pretty good as well. Naya, I don't think much changed on her, except for the fact that she is safe at the start of a fight, where assassins are supposed to be picking off high priority targets. Would that make the class absolutely broken from the get-go? Yeah, I think so. But then again, shouldn't they be?
No.
Okay, why not? Let's hear it.
An assassin is meant to take out high priority targets, yes. But your current situation is honestly putting him at an even bigger disadvantage in some situations.
Such as?
Considering the fact that that means they can just be hitting themselves against a wall in the back instead. I'm going to go back to the Miriam example. If she's just standing in the back throwing kunai at, say, Elias, is she going to be doing jack all?
Yeah, but that's Elias.
Okay.
That's Elias.
You want to just pick up Elias?
Fallen
Frey.
Okay, but you can kill a Fallen Frey. You cannot simply say, let's have him hit a Loman instead, and proc the T5 Dark. So
you're talking about the jump anyway. If they're all still walking up and you're using it to say avoid a Leo, aren't they just going to retarget to her anyway?
What do you mean?
Her anyway? The way you dodge a Leo in current meta is by jumping basically immediately. Would be jumping immediately because of the fact that Leo hits the front two most heroes. If that's the case and you do it same frame, everyone's still walking, and that's basically like them starting in the back anyway. That is going to make some of them retarget to the assassins regardless.
Okay, but here's the thing: you make them enter a fight with a single button, which means that you choose when they are taking damage. So you pop them like let's say in a smoke screen. You cannot hit people in smoke screen, well, in some games at least. So he could pop out his skills, such as Greenery, because I think Greenery is a great example. Cannot be CC'd until you pop a singular skill, which in turn counters a Leo to some degree. Obviously not to everything, because otherwise we would be seeing Greenery way more often. But at the end of the day, most of Leos are using a Crystal Music box. I wonder how many hits it would take for him being absolute backline. How many hits he would be able to take from a Gladi?
You aren't wrong there.
How many hits could he take from a Rapine that's already there in that Reheat, jumping to that in S1 because he's CC immune? How many hits would he take from a Miriam? How many hits would he take from like how many hits would he take from an Epis?
0.
So in that sense, and the same thing goes, I'm not sure how many Epises you have faced in like League, because I haven't. But whenever I see an Epis and I instantly think like, I don't want this in my backline, that's what we're posing. From Miri's passive hits, he'll just die. Yes, I want to get Leo out of the damn way. Like, obviously there's so many bad sides to this, but it allows certain characters. Let's face it like this: we are going to get buff patches like once every month, once every 2 months, and the assassins they won't create an identity by simply saying, oh, we just increased their damage, oh, we decreased their mana bar, oh, we increased their non-hero damage. That will not fix the problems that they're facing, and that is the fact that they run against walls that they cannot kill, for one, because I try killing a Dosada with my current Gladi. Not possible, my dude. Absolutely impossible. And Gladi's targeting says you just hit the front line, you hope to S3 one character in the back line, but then again, Gladi just hits once or twice, goes back to the front line, hits Dosada, and it's absolutely not doing anything. And Gladi, being the one character that's supposed to be the king of the arena of some sort, is not doing anything in the game. So that also means that I would like to see either the do buff or the class buff, and I'd rather see the class buff to then change the meta completely to make assassins more viable altogether. Imagine doing this to counter with, let me read that up. Imagine doing this to counter Leo when you can only pick 2 tanks. Also having heroes like Greenery and Urzi that are midline, so you can CC and hit them being your backline instead. That sounds... I'm not sure if it's too broken. One thing they could do every season or every week, one class are getting buffs in the arena, and during that week season we get to see more of the heroes appear, and that would make players not just benching some characters. There's still a problem with that. Are you going to, for the people who get to spend in this game, they don't have much against this, because Challenger players have a way bigger roster than the usual players. But that would also incentivize some people to not be able to play. Because I've already been in this discussion, I'm not sure which podcast we did this in, or was it the stream itself? But
I'm pretty sure it was a podcast, because I talked about, I believe in LOH, the idea of banning the 3 most used heroes or something.
Yep. Because that will literally break down like 50% of the players, because they cannot pick their own heroes. Which means that you're basically incentivizing the people to build a wide variety of roster in which this game gives out a lot, but you can never have enough of. But that is just things to me where that's an entire different discussion. So I'd like to pass up on that. But
I'd like to propose the counterpoints that will be the biggest issues with what you're providing to this point.
Mm-hmm.
For one, there's still going to be the issue of if they start getting shields up again.
Mm-hmm.
If they start getting shields up regardless, this is where I was going with Fallen Freight earlier, it's not going to matter in the first place. Again, we can just point out the fact that they can just make whoever they have in the backline run Helmet, and then all of a sudden the assassin can't do anything for 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, a Fallen Freight and an Evan can both cast their S2 and S3.
Mm-hmm.
They have shields up now. What are you doing?
Okay.
You have to either wait for them, which granted your idea does help them in this situation because they're in the backline taking less targeting.
Mm-hmm.
But it also means that you're just giving them more time to do what they want in your front line. And with how fast the games go at this point, your front line is going to die before your backliner can do anything.
But let's go with a realistic draft then. Let's say people are picking Evan into Fall Afraid. Well, isn't necessarily realistic nowadays. But they're going to pick either Dosar or Shockman, because those are the only viable tanks that we have nowadays. And let's say, just on the Fall of Fry side of things, and maybe Isaiah, which is also a character which, with some jump-ins and such, will make Assassins completely not viable, because the S3 will dispel all of the unique weapons of Gladi, for instance. And we can probably come up with some other things that will show that characters like Gladi are absolutely impossible, right? So then they have a damage dealer, and 9 out of 10 times if you have a draft like that, there will be a frontline damage dealer. Let's say Scarlet, let's say somebody else. Scarlet takes up a lot of time to wind up her soul weapon to then hit somebody in the backline to make sure that the backline, or not necessarily the backline, but an assassin such as let's say Epis, because she is not seen because of what? Too much CC, too much sustainability, and not fast enough. But what if she's already in the backline? She can wait 5 seconds just staying there. Mm-hmm. And she will be allowed to gain mana. And she will be allowed to rain havoc up on people, because I think a Epis will be able to one-shot any Evan shield. Such as Syria does, basically, right? Because I would like to put these assassins on the same pedestal as Syria is right now, being a warrior. So, them just standing there, and yes, there's obviously things like Helmet, but it puts them in a position where they don't have to do damage. They just need to be there.
To this, I still want to point out that there is other possible issues with this. For example, if your target is always just standing in the back line, that also limits who they can hit.
Mm-hmm.
One of the characters you might want to target in this situation is a Valance, and Valance won't get hit because you have another healer that your assassin has to get through first.
Yep, true.
That's not assassinating the highest priority target, that's just retargeting, not the front line.
Yep. But that is their problem, right? Because obviously you wouldn't give them all the strength. Like, oh, you want to be able to have them target everybody at will, because that would make this game entirely crazy. Because then we will have our game filled with 700 buttons, and we can basically look at like, I'm not sure if you've ever played like a flight simulator, but we're gonna look at a mobile phone being equal to a flight simulator. I don't think we want to have that at some point. So I'm also mad curious what they're gonna do with these new pets, because I don't know if it's gonna be a new button of some sort, but. But allowing them to stay in the backline will give them such a huge advantage of something that they don't have now. And obviously, people already are mentioning like, oh, but then Lorraine will divert her S3 to the absolute backline. Great! That's actually the use of it, because then not everybody in the backline gets hit. Or in your own line gets hit. That's useful. The only problem is that they have to survive that stuff. If there is a possibility like that.
I think this would be a good time for us to segue into my little document here, because you said something that made me start giggling.
Okay. Either way, like VZ is saying, like assassins being able to jump and dispel and break shields. Yep, I will vouch for that too, man. We don't have enough shield breaks in this game. Anyway, please enlighten me, man, because I'm getting too sidetracked with my own idea, trying to justify it for some reason, which people will almost likely get mad and give me so many dislikes. I don't even want to know if I want to post this one. Either way, let's get it, man.
I'm going to probably just get just as antsy with mine.
Mm-hmm.
You know how you just mentioned how giving assassins the ability to target anyone?
Yep.
That may or may not be the basis of where this is going.
I knew it! But like we said, man, like we already talked about this, because the taunt part also came from my pocket. So yeah, we got some things over here. This will already, it's not necessarily just an assassin buff, it will also be a tank buff to make them more viable as well.
Yes.
Anyway.
I'm going to repost the link in chat for if anyone in chat wants to be able to read it themselves at the same time as us.
Mm-hmm.
But there you guys go. But here's the primary things that everyone should note here. This isn't just assassins that we are going to talk about. We will also be talking about defenders, which is the tank class in their actual name, if you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with assassins because that's where we just were. Basically, notice how in like Saria, she goes straight through the line. In situations like Nyla, she is targeting the highest attack. Isaiah targets highest attack. That's similar to what a lot of assassins have right now. But they would basically cut out all of those targeting situations. And that would be why this class is more special. They get to select who they are targeting in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
When a jump skill is used, the screen will enter a slowdown mode. During this, 4 targets will appear on the opposing heroes. Note at the top that it says we're referring to PvP unless otherwise noted. The player will have 5 seconds to select which hero they would like to jump to, and if no one is selected, the skill is automatically used where they are and no jumping happens. Meaning, for example, Rupine has a jumping skill. If it's not used in 5 seconds, she'll just slap it on whoever she's already targeting without repositioning herself at all. If the targeted hero is selected during the jump, the assassin just repositions themselves behind that hero, making it so that they still move in that case. In this slowdown stage that I just mentioned, the game itself moves at about a 10th pace, meaning that which would normally be a 60 FPS second would be a quote-unquote 6 frame per second.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that at maximum, you get 0.5 seconds of game time passing during this, which also affects things like mana charge, cooldowns, etc. The obvious stuff that it should affect.
Mm-hmm.
And a major point of this is both players, when this happens, will experience the slowdown. This is important for later as well. And I would like to make this as a notable thing at first because of the fact that immediately by having the slowdown phase, it allows you to add more strategy to the game since now you're given a chance to think mid-game. You can tell what your opponent is doing both ways because you'll be able to see what skills are getting cast, what shields your opponent has, all that. Tamahome said it best, it's the Matrix effect. Which just basically allows for more incremental game. That's the main core of the assassin jumps. They literally can target where they're going. If you want to scroll down, you can see a pictorial reference that Exile and Zigforce helped me get the other day. We'll get to the taunt in a minute, but you can see how the taunt slightly starts playing as well.
Gundam already points this out. I like this one. This feels bad. Like you could use a jump to slow down Yuri and make it easier to cleanse her. Build more attack speed. I want to see her die. Like let's face it, Yuri's broken, man. Like if you could kill with an S3, it doesn't matter if you can slow the time down, man. You can have your picture frame perfect to just see your characters die in slow motion. It's gonna be the same thing.
Now, I also will be getting into Yutue here, because certain Transcendence perks will be rewritten with these changes.
Yo.
T2-2, which is, if you look at the game, I don't remember exactly what it was. I believe it was you get dodge over time, and then once you dodge, you lose all that dodge to regain it.
This.
Yeah. Upon selecting a jump skill, you get 2 less seconds to think, but you gain a 50% attack for 3 seconds immediately after jumping, which basically means that you have to react quicker, but you'll do more damage with the reaction. In T2-5, which is the one that you were talking about earlier, upon selecting a jump skill, you will automatically jump to the back, which means you lose the targeting. However, your next skill costs nothing to use, making it essentially a combo tool.
Okay.
The second one is meant to be a little bit more of a niche perk. However, the ability to add a combo system is what I was mostly trying to emphasize.
So it's like how Epis uses their S3 with one of the perks where it combos into S1 automatically.
Yeah.
But now you can select the skill.
Yeah. Which in Epis's case might actually be scary because that means that she can S2 immediately into S1 and who that target is, and then immediately S1 a second time.
I'm glad you brought it up yourself. Oh man, it would be quite crazy though, for sure.
In auto mode, a random hero is selected, meaning that you don't have to worry about having to wait 5 seconds every single time.
Yo, Zephilius has it as well. That perk with Reheat and Repeat will be an insta kill to one hero at the backline. Yep, because you can literally bust up all of your skills after that. Yo, I'm gonna see just Christmas ornament Reheat so he can deal with the mana problems at hand because he is not an assassin.
Yeah, like that's the thing you need to remember here. Reheat doesn't get this combo tool as well. Yeah. Also, when both of them use, they immediately have their S4 as their next skill to use, which in turn would make that perk useless because of the fact that that skill costs 0 to use anyway. Yep. Meaning the best use for that would be using it so you can repeat S2 into repeat S1 or S3, both of which actually can still do good damage. Then you make Reheat jump and do S4. It makes them more viable, however, it doesn't make them as strong as you're probably thinking.
Epis.
As an alternative to selecting a hero, they will also be selectable from the skill menu where your actual skills are. S1 would be the hero in the front, the soul weapon would represent the hero in the back, in order. In PvE, if there's more than 4 enemies, the skill UI would randomly pick 4. Their targets would be green on screen while all the rest are blue, allowing you to figure out roughly who's being targeted where. Again, if you scroll a little bit further down, you'll get to see where this gets a bit more interesting at the bottom.
And I have to pause this for a second because I'm just thinking about technicalities, right? Because we have a lot of characters who are jumping, let's say, to the highest attacker.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is not very great, because you can attack bait the craziest things, which also means that with the TM skills also brought the demise to a lot of assassins. Because let's have Kybera jump to Chase because he's the highest attacker. Because I can put, let's say, a Lorraine, which you might want to jump upon, on just continuous damage, get more defense attack onto my Chase, which then in turn makes him the highest attacker, and guess what? Kybera gets killed by Chase. And same goes for a lot of other characters that have that highest attacker thing that, even though it seems good, it just doesn't cut it nowadays, because you do not get to your high priority character.
Exactly, which again is part of why this is better. Mm-hmm. In a lot of cases, the highest priority character will be the character second from the back, which is like the third character, I guess would be the best way to say it. In this case, you're able to target them much more reliably, and in turn kill them quicker, which might help break up the entirety of your opponent's comp. Now Gundam, the visual clutter I would actually like to juxtapose, because we'll be getting into that in a bit, because I have pictures further down.
Okay. Further then.
Now we are going to go ahead and talk about taunting, because this directly plays into jumping. This would mainly be implemented on a lot of the tank S2s because of the fact that it makes sense for them to go to the tank S2s. Like, let's go ahead and talk about Dosarda. Her S2 literally is the cleanse, which raises up her shields, doing a giant burst. It is literally a focus. It makes you look at
Big light, hit me, dummy!
Ricardo S2 is another good one. He slams his pole on the ground, creating like an aura around him. Philip S2 is a self buff where he kind of goes, rah! Sonya S2, it creates the shield around her. Roman S2 literally creates a whole bunch of shields while holding up his hand. A lot of tank S2s are literal attention baits. Yeah, like similar to what Gundam just said right there. Shaq S3 is a giant attention bait.
Yep.
Like Shaq and Klaus are the two characters I'd say that S3 would most certainly work better in S2. But when a jump skill is used, you get that slowdown immediately. Upon this slowdown, if you have a taunt skill and its activation requirements are met, like cooldown, mana, and all that, you're able to cast the taunt skill while it's in slowdown before your opponent gets to do jack all. Because the way it would work is taunt gets first priority over jump.
Yep.
Like, you would have to still take a second minimum in order to jump for your animations and whatnot, while taunt can be used almost immediately.
Yep. And this is what I'd also like to add, because let's say what taunt does in a general sense, it allows to focus the damage on the tank, which then in turn means that let's say if we get free reign to wherever assassins are walking, jumping, or whatever, it gives it's basically to counteract that problem. But we're only talking PvP specifics, and on the PvE side of things, this could also be implemented as a combat mechanic. To then, let's say, and we have, I'm probably way ahead of this, but remember Urkok, that spawns like a lot of stuff where if he spawns, and if your healers do a ridiculous amount of healing, it will then hit either your healers or your main attacker, which you don't want happening, right? But a well-timed S2 and you taunt, that will make sure to counteract that certain mechanic as well. So it's not just PvP, but also PvE, or not just PvP, but also PvE side of things.
Gundam says, does taunt affect non-jumpers like if Chase pushes the tank with the tank taunts? Currently, with how I am thinking of it being implemented, I'd say no. Because it's not an attention pool for everyone, it's an attention pool for the assassin.
Yo, I want to be able to pull Syria. Why are you taking that away from me? I like that. It would technically break down like Chase even further, but hey, whatever, right?
Like, what would need to happen is there would need to be certain... Like, the point of taunt is that it mostly happens during slowdown. There would need to be some logistic issues talked about if it affects anything during non-slowdown.
But can I oppose something else instead of the Matrix stuff? Because I get the worry from some of the people, like it being visual clogged and whatever. How about that if you infuse a jump? Why not make yourself invulnerable at that point? AKA iframing.
I don't want to get into iframes yet, mostly because of the fact that I haven't fully talked about the taunt yet.
Cause it's skill based. No, I'm kidding, man. Just it's something right at the top of my head. Had to get that off my chest. Just continue, my friend. Continue.
Yeah. Upon casting a taunt skill, the slowdown time is completely stopped, while the taunt skill animation is focused. Basically meaning that taunt skill, whatever the other effects besides it being you taunting as well, all of those activate as well. For example, if everyone except Dosarda is stunned and then they also jump, you can use Dosarda S2, which would both cleanse all of your team and pull that assassin. Which means that it's a little bit more effective.
Yeah, and in a sense, if your skill is on a cooldown, you cannot then be using it. So you can force people to use it by, let's say, oh, Dosarda has her S2. No problem. Stun her, she needs the S2, and then you jump right after. Cannot use the taunt anymore, right?
Mitona says, is taunt count as crowd control? If yes, does taunt get affected by CC resist or CC accuracy? I would argue no. For the primary reason that this isn't necessarily a form of crowd control. This is a form of attraction / retargeting. It's not necessarily stunning or literally affecting... What's the best way to say this? It's not trying to directly impose an effect on a character. It is refocusing where damage is going of a certain character.
However, it could go both ways. Like you can say like one way or the other. You can have good or bad on it. Because let's say if it is affected by CC resistance, then Valus will obviously play a bigger role because the S1 gives CC immunity unless it gets dispelled, right? So that's a game mechanic, which means that if you get one of those characters to jump, put them in the back line, allow them not to get taunted anymore, is pretty good. Same goes for Loman S2, Dosarda S2, to make sure that they are where they should be instead of getting taunted.
I would argue that the best way to say this would make it literally in the text of the skill. Say, this skill cannot be taunt, this skill cannot be
resisted,
crowd controlled, is not affected by CC, or this skill is affected by CC. Like, that would be the best way to defer it. That way you can kind of just selectively pick it, and like maybe all of them aren't, but we reword the T2-5 to say the skill your jumping ability is now affected by CC. However, or like CC res. However, you can still do the zero cost and all that.
Yep. And this automatically just puts a factor in it to use it in the PvE side of things as well, because bosses themselves are by default CC immune. So this way you can use it on bosses and then generate new types of content as well, if we're looking at King's Right 2 side of things.
But yeah, like, the way me put it is it's more or less more similar to a status effect,
Mm-hmm.
where like almost like a lock-on.
Mm.
That would be the more equivalent of it, like just an undispellable lock-on effect.
Mm.
That would be the best way to probably implement it, actually.
Because I think this, even if we did just remove the whole assassin type of thing, I think the taunt itself should be implemented, and not just for the PvP side of things, but the PvE. It opens up so much more gameplay, where we're basically using the same combat, but the fact that bosses can simply target high priority specific characters, and that you have to use this skill to counteract that, like a counter. Because there are, if you look at action type of games, and I would debate this being an action type of game as well, because it is continuous timing events, basically. By adding this onto a boss where you could say, oh, you could just loam and shield to shield all of the stuff, it could also then be implemented towards certain bosses where they're like, oh my god, I'm going to run through your whole team, and then you make sure that that stuff doesn't happen because they're taunted.
Yeah, you're getting a better idea then.
Right? Because at that point, it could be implemented, not just PvP side of things. So I like that. I like that. Does the assassin targeting have a cooldown? Like, bring it to, if you bring two assassins, can they both use it back to back? Woo! Okay, I'll let Karu do the thinking on that one.
I would argue yes, because of the fact that it's still just like using a skill.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're using a skill, then you're able to immediately segue into using other skills immediately after.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you had, say, two assassins in the party, you S1, pick where you want to target, get 2 again, then pick another. That just gives you more time to think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're about to argue of people spamming 4 skills of stun just for the slowdown,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't fully work, because you're still going to have cooldowns on these skills immediately afterwards.
Yep.
Because yes, you may be able to stun a match for 20 seconds and be annoying, but you're immediately going to die right after, giving people the opponent points.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, actually, like Les X, I was saying, Taunt could be used to prevent bosses from hitting backline heroes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you may be able to use an assassin, a whole bunch, 4 assassins or 2 assassins for that type of situation. But you're giving yourself so limited alternate options after these bursts that it almost negates the damage in the first place.
But VZ, here's the thing. There is a player picking 2-3 assassins and the enemy is forced to pick 2-3 tanks and only 1 DPS. I don't... Like... We're still talking about the same time. You don't necessarily gain an advantage by having the time slowed down. Like, obviously you can time your skills semi better, but the opposite side can gain from that perspective just as much.
Your opponent gets just as much time to think as your opponent gets as much time to think as you would want. Like, yes, you may be able to have 3 jumpers focused on 1 hero, but say you're using also like 2 AoE heroes like Maruru and Scarlet. They may be able to kill the Scarlet, but then the Maruru would just be able to assassinate him.
Yeah.
Or they may kill the Maruru, but then the Scarlet can assassinate him.
Like, it doesn't necessarily gain you an advantage just to have your time slowed down. It still kills you if you move in the same rate. Like, the only way time slowed down is an actual fuck up is if you get a speed advantage.
And to that, I still say you have to have the mana in the first place for all these skills.
Yep, true. And I would dare to see this stuff happen where people just simply go, oh, I will just pick 3 assassins. into one team, knowing that they're all squishy as hell. Like now we have the lineups where people pick DOK, Rebel Claw, Scarlet into one team, put a Nyla up there and a Leo, and then you have all warriors that can survive some things, right? That is, I wouldn't even call it good, but it is plausible. But with the assassins not having that much capacity, I don't think it will ever happen where people just make 3 jumpers and just focus you like that. It would be funny though. I would do it on stream to just show people.
You're either sacrificing a tank or you're sacrificing heals.
Yep.
And if you're sacrificing the tank, there's no healer that's going to help an assassin survive point blank getting absolutely rickrolled by a Scarlet. And if it's a tank you're sacrificing, where's your healing coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Which that means that the moment you really get hit by anything, you're going to die.
Yep.
Like VX is saying, but the assassins can target whichever they want, right? I mean, if the assassin's targeting thing has a cooldown, then it'll be more manageable. You're also forgetting the assassin's skills will be a weird effect. Like, yes, they might be able to purposely target the tank, but if they're not killing that tank, what did that jump actually do?
And I think we need to go back to the basic problem of it, is that assassins don't have an identity within this game, because we have Syria doing everything that assassins do, but better. Mm-hmm. Which is why
I'll continue reading,
Mm-hmm.
because I have more that I had to say about it.
Okay, I'll just look.
Activation requirements refer to the mana cost, cooldown, etc. If there's a prerequisite for skills to be used, like jumping skills that usually cost 2 to 3 mana,
mm-hmm.
they still have to get through that. It's not like you can instantly S3 use 3 jumping skills without having 3 Soul Spring Waters.
Mm-hmm. True.
If the hero is dead, they cannot taunt. Obviously, you can't have it start a taunt from the grave.
Damn it.
If the hero dies upon casting the taunt still goes off, dragging the taunted hero to where they were upon death. Meaning, if a taunt skill results in the hero's death, they're pulled to there, which means that the assassin still has to run to the next hero.
Mm-hmm.
Taunt is not a long-term effect. It only matters when the jump is enacted. Taunt works for PvE enemies that dive, but only one or a group doing it. Think of like the worms. Like the absolutely chaotic worms of Eclipse and whatnot that are a huge issue.
Oh yeah. I was like, which one are you referring to? But yeah, those.
As we scroll down, you can see the 2 images that were provided to me by Zig and Exi.
Mm-hmm.
Or Exile, sorry. These 2 are supposed to at least help you visualize it a little better. We have, in this case, a Kybera, who would use his S2, which would in favor make him, say, target the Shamilla. However, the Dosarda can use her S2 and drag the Kybera to her instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, that will make Ezekiel a little obsolete though, because like we said before,
against the Dosarda.
Yes, but that's like the harder part, because you're picking Ezekiel into Shamila just because you're assuming that she's highest attack, which means that you should be able to hit her, which means that you can Dosarda S2, make sure that the Ezekiel just doesn't do much.
But the Ezekiel can choose to target the Shamila. It's not him having to go to the highest attack.
Yeah, true.
On top of that, if you know a Dosarda is coming out, you can ban the Dosarda so that you can have a higher chance of him getting there. Granted, they might be able to pick something like a Ricardo, who has a low mana cost skill that you might be able to taunt with.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be 2 tanks of all things being picked to counter a single hero on your side, which is a net positive for you.
Mm-hmm.
Gundam pointed out that Jane can taunt too.
Yep.
Wellman can, but his is a 3 cost, a reminder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are the things, right?
I would need to think about Jane's taunt.
Mm-hmm. So at any angle, like, I still feel that the classes overall will still have to face the initial problem, and that is called mana gain, dealing with Scarlets, dealing with Lucicules, dealing with everything that will currently not allow him to move, because like I said, otherwise Naya would have worked already. And I'm not seeing where this system is going to make sure that that is not a problem anymore for them. Because it will give them a niche gimmick, yes, 100%, and I like it. But I'm not sure how this will fix their current PvP issues.
Their current PvP issues are not being able to do damage whenever they're using their skills, or not being able to start off at the beginning of a match like every other burst comp currently does. But that's kind of defeating the point of Assassins, because they were never meant to be able to counter a lot of burst comps. Ezekiel's the one exception to this because of the fact that he has more burst tools in his kit. The point isn't necessarily to make Assassins overpowered or the new meta. The point is to give them tools to do what they want to do should they get the ability to.
Yeah, and that's where the problem is, because I would then still never pick them over the current roster. Still not. And we get a taunt on top of our faces, which means that if you time it correctly with the Matrix time, then yes, you get an initial hit on your Shamilla, you taunt, and then Ezekiel's not doing everything or anything anymore. Because it's...
Again, the taunt only works if you use it during Matrix time.
Yes.
Meaning that Shamilla would either not get hit or Shamilla would exclusively get hit.
But there's still like active frames or like a jump frame itself, then an initial hit frame. And while doing it, yes, you get the first hit, but not the auto attacks afterward, right?
No. If you get the selection off for Matrix time, then it doesn't matter if the opponent can taunt or not. The taunt doesn't work anymore. Taunt only becomes of effect if it's in Matrix time.
Okay, so that means we don't jump at all.
Yeah, if you don't want to jump, then don't jump.
Okay,
but if you do jump,
when in that fight does
taunt.
Ezekiel jump?
Almost immediately.
Okay, but
they use
Dosada
Soul
S2
Spring
is
Waters.
immediately as well.
Yeah. So either ban the Dosarda, or don't pick an Ezekiel into a Dosarda.
But you need to pick a, because this is something that you see happen a lot. Dosada into Shamis happen very frequently, which means that you are going to run into a Lucicio that can probably clean up the rest. Gen S2 is also instant. Is it? Interesting.
Which one? Jane S2? Jane S2 is not necessarily instant because Jane S2 requires it to be Soul Spring Water as well, because again, it's 1 mana.
But I think it still doesn't give them the identity that they should have, because they're still facing the problems, the same things. Right? The way to pick apart a bruiser team is by killing the healers, technically. But if they never get to that point, by just Scarlet S4, Lucicio S2 into S3 into whatever the hell he does to kill people in frontline. Because, funny enough, you can kill a, just give Assassin's Warrior Gears. Well, yeah, that could do, but that still doesn't give him an identity. Then just call them Warriors. That would be exactly the same. But not giving them an identity within the game is still, I think that part is still the most lackluster to me, because I like the way this is set up. I truly do. But the problems that they are facing right now, it's just, or just rework their TM skills altogether. Liking that. And we still don't know what the new legendary or the new pets are going to do with the current meta. We don't know. Could change up everything just like TM did. But yeah, it at least grants them the ability to jump whoever they want. I like that, because nowadays you can just attack bait with just about everything because of TM gear. So it does that. but still the initial startup problems that all of them face, I don't think that gets negated by this.
The startup problem is something you have to play around, but...
Okay, but if the startup problem is already a problem right now, then it's going to be a problem after. And it cannot be played around because the meta is this way. Otherwise, you would already see assassins more than you would.
And that's kind of where the big problem lies. If the problem isn't with the assassins, it's with the warriors, and they have this no nerf policy, then is there really anything you can truly do outside nerfing warriors or trying to give assassins some tools to be able to weaken them?
Yeah, to not get hit, like moving them to the back.
But then again, we can just look at Rebel Claws.
Rebel Claws hits everybody, but if we're using the banning argument, you can do that.
Exactly.
But you're then not running into, let's say, a Requina that's unstoppable, because let's face the Evan, Leo, Requina, Loman, Dosada lineup. Yes, you will get killed by a Rebel Claws on startup if you put a Gladi there, if you would put an Epis there, if you would put any assassin there because they don't have the HP. Then again, they will never start up because you will get locked down by the absolute front line. Gladi, however, will literally decimate a shield, kill a Requina by just auto attacks. And a Leo on top of it, because Leo is absolute backline on that situation. So, granted that you are then hitting characters that are high priority while just simply banning a Rebel Claws, fixes the problem.
And to this, I wish to remind you that a lot of these jump costs for all these skills, for example, Epis went out without taking her perk is 2 mana. Ezekiel is 1 mana.
Mm-hmm.
Kybera can be as little as 1 mana.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these skills that you would want to use for these jumps can be used in almost immediate timing or
True.
off the start of the match, should you want to use them off the start of the match if you're trying to get them out of the way.
True. And everybody's having Soul Spring Waters, but why aren't we seeing them now? And what makes Syria better than all these other characters then?
Because of the fact that she has the more sustainability and the less counteractable damage.
Because she can
This
rock
is again
perfume and
where-
not get CC'd. That's it.
And then there's things such as the fact that if there's an attack bait, that's a big problem immediately. A lot
But
of
there's
these
the
guys
thing
don't jump
that's
that
the,
far.
the artifact dimension that's coming from this. Because if you are saying, okay, mana is the issue, and you can necessarily pop a Soul Spring Water on any of these characters, but they have to kill something straight away.
I remind you of T2-5 that I gave you here.
True.
Upon selecting a jump skill, you automatically go to the back. However, your next skill costs nothing to use. This basically fixed that issue that you were talking about earlier.
Kybera
How-
S3 straight after that. It sounds fun, but it still costs you to a certain degree. But I still think that Shamila is faster in this situation. Shamila S3 will counteract that because you need, what, 2 or 3 mana for the Kybera jump. I'm opened up right here.
If I recall, it's only 1 if you do like his middle path.
Yeah, but that's the middle path, and that isn't necessarily going to kill Shamila shields, right? I'm looking at the chat for this one because I have not seen Kyberas doing anything as of late.
In that case, a Soul Spring Water with the first one selected is still only 2 mana. And I believe you can also take UT2, which reduces the S2 by 1 mana again. Which means that it would be technically viable to use S3 in that situation.
Then people will slot a Morphing to their assassins. Maybe. Wanna give Taylor a perk where she has dispellable immunity for 5 seconds at the start? Yo, that would be godlike. Oh man. But yeah.
Again, that's not fixing the problem here.
No.
Oh wait, that's immunity, not CC immunity. Never mind.
But it's honestly just hard to see these characters with their current startup, plus their animation, plus their attack speed, knowing that there is one character that can just simply say, oh, S3, you die. because you cannot kill that shield, and there's only Ezekiel that has the capacity to jump that right now, which is quite nasty, and it will only make Abera viable, I guess, due to his high mana cost. It doesn't necessarily make Naya more viable against characters like Shamila, and we still have to deal with the issue that if they don't get the move against Scarlet, against Lucikiel, if they don't get any mana whatsoever by just a Requena.
So this, I would like to point out that you are specifically talking about a lot of burst heroes here. What about the fact that we're seeing a lot of like Kazuo meta right now?
Okay, which one of these assassins with this current lineup could kill a Kazuo?
None. But that's not without taking it. That's what we're talking about if we're not taking out, say, the balance immediately. You target the balance, get rid of her, all of a sudden he has less damage reduction on him. And therefore you would also be able to slowly start segueing into killing other heroes. Since a lot of these assassins have their gimmicks so that if something dies, they immediately like regain mana and get to use their skills again or something.
Okay, let me put this one into perspective. There are a few characters who have always hit, which technically should counteract Kazuo's gimmick of having high value dodge. Cecilia has 100% accuracy rate, which means that you can simply build anything against a Kazuo, still dies. Rebel Claws, or not even Rebel Claws, DLK, same gimmick, dies against Kazuo because he's just that broken. Cecilia rocks literally the same gear as any assassin does, which means that overall, in terms of gear, you will die. Even if you do kill the backline, even if you do kill the tank, if you're lucky, you will die to Kazuo. I've tested this out against several of them in the EU server, and they're not even that good. And obviously, my Cecilia is not top tier when it comes to PvP. But I tried making her work with a Christmas star ornament, and obviously she's not an assassin, but let's face it, she was not capable. She had nothing. So
this is where I don't really know what to tell you with this type of thing, because your solution doesn't really fix this type of problem either.
In terms of speed, maybe it does. Because
yes, maybe in terms of the immediate speed, but Shamila would still hit her. Kazuo would still be able to do his thing eventually. Our Rebel Claws would still hit them. Just going to the backline at the start of a match doesn't truly help, especially when you're just putting it on a time gate anyway.
Yeah, but that's where I think it's interesting. If you can simply press a button to allow them to enter a fight. Because you don't want to enter the fight straight away, because we know what happens when an Isaiah insta jumps. The whole team clocks together and everybody comes together, and that is actually a gimmick to then use on characters who have high HP, high tank value, which is currently happening in at least the Royal Masters and probably even the Challengers side of League of Honor, where positioning is everything. Which initially gave me this idea as well, to then allow characters that don't have any place, or yeah, literally place in the game, to give them a new place to start out with. And
now that's actually where I misheard you earlier about your thing. I assumed that meant you wanted them to immediately go to the back of the line.
Nope.
Your opponent's back line.
No, it's like you make sure, like, if you press the button, they start at the back line. But you don't see them at all during the fight until you press that button.
Which means that they still have to do their run up.
Yep. No, well, not necessarily. You don't see them at all. Like, you can then simply just still say you have the option, let's say left or right button. Let's say left button, you start off with, let's say, ridiculous attack to run down any front line. And then right button, whenever you press it, then the characters will stop or will show up at their backline. But before you press either one of these buttons, you don't even see them on your screen, which means that you cannot even damage them. And you can simply put a time limit on it. Let's say you got 10 seconds before they show up.
I'm getting a few ideas with this concept being implemented.
And here's the problem, right? Because once again, we're having this issue where I feel like assassins don't have the identity, and I'm not sure if either one of us has the fix, because in terms of just raw stat value, if you grant warriors a jump, then warriors are better. Guaranteed. Just by stat value, warriors are better, which means that Syria's always going to be better no matter what, because she is a low mana cost as it is, right? Put a perfume on her, she's beefy as hell. She gets to people's backline, she gets to be enabled. Why? Because she lives through damage. But that's only because you can use a perfume on her, because the mana cost is warriors have less attack, okay, but judging by that fact, doesn't that mean that assassins should technically kill everybody? Because
the whole gimmick of assassins is that they're supposed to do large single target damage.
Yeah. Like
Wow.
Syria.
Yeah, fair enough.
They should all be like Syria, but you cannot simply go and this is also why I want to have a class-wide buff instead of having one character buff specifically. And I know I'm greedy on this stuff. I'm really greedy, and to some degree people might say like, oh, you want assassins to be the most overpowered class. Not necessarily true, but I want us to be able to play the class. Instead of like giving them things that other classes already have, or other characters already have.
I feel like where we need to shift away from is not thinking of them maybe just in terms of their PvP, but maybe thinking of ways that this can be implemented to their PvE play.
Okay.
Because that's actually one place where assassins still actually have a decent bit of identity. Gremory is still one of the best PvE heroes in the game because of her versatility.
100% true.
Roy is the world boss 2 meta. Rapine Reheat has one of the highest clears in Eclipse period.
But isn't that just stats?
Not necessarily, actually.
Okay, so what sets these characters apart?
The fact that they have a very strong burst skill that they can use in such a short amount of time.
But moving forward to the PvE side of things, because they're not gonna rework a world boss. There's obviously gonna be some power creep, where what already happened with Roy, let's say, because he wasn't world boss 2 top tier whatsoever. He gained a buff, became top tier overnight. Absolutely insane character. But in terms of gameplay, because we're coming up with King's Raid 2 within like 6, 7, 8 months, and we're gonna have to need new gameplay, because yes, we can add a new boss, and the Taunt experience, I think that would be crazy to add whatsoever. I really do like that one.
I do feel like some version of Taunt would be nice, but
But
I do feel like maybe giving assassins the ability to target would help them.
Yep.
But maybe the key here is the fact that something like this needs to be added, but it isn't the change, it's a stepping stone to the change. Like maybe that plus your ability to come in whenever you please type thing would be the best way to do it.
Yep. Or even
like
to
merging
go.
the two. Like maybe merging the two things together would help.
Because whenever I think about assassins, and maybe that's way too far-fetched. Whenever you think about assassins in games, they have high mobility, the potential to make sure that damage doesn't even phase them because they're squishy, right? But they're able to dodge things, but not by chance, but by skill. And I think that last part might be a key solution to increase people. How about you raise the soft cap of dodge to 70%? That pops it up to the RNG side of things, not skill. I'm talking pure skill-based class. Because that is what assassins 9 out of 10 times in all games. It doesn't matter how complicated the mechanics are. Assassins 9 out of 10 times are the highest mechanical required classes in any game. You mean by making them damage immune during their skill cast? Yes. Iframing. 100%. I'm still like, how about you be able to jump people like a Shamila S3? I would like that. But maybe I'm the only one, right? I'm just saying.
You like a reactionary charge?
Yeah, it's like, oh, you see some things pop up in your window. Oh, no problem. Undispellable, iframe, I can still jump your shit. Because that would be crazy and still counterable to stun them before the initial cast.
Like perhaps a different version of targeting could also be involved.
Yeah, because if you look at...
Here's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a good example. Say we have this jumping thing. They jump to him, and then when that character is about to cast, you can maybe use... If you cast one of your skills while the opponent that you're targeting is casting,
mm-hmm.
then you also are able to iframe dodge that skill. So for example, Ezekiel jumps to a Shamila, and then Shamila uses S3, but you also can use Ezekiel S1. A slowdown happens, you can use Ezekiel S1, and Ezekiel dodges the attack. Granted, it doesn't make the rest of your team dodge it, but Ezekiel would.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Something like that could actually help quite a bit.
Yep. True. And think about your Shakma ways. Like if you have the Path of the Sun, right? A pillar spawns. You gotta kill it ASAP. Why not give the assassin the role to actually target that pillar by just jumping it? Similar, right? Because they're able to get to the highest attack value, but if it's a totem that doesn't have any damage,
mm-hmm.
then it still needs to get killed, and then you can use the gimmicks to target, right? Which then creates a necessity for assassin being built and being there. So that, in a sense,
it feels like we're getting to. It feels like we're getting there, but we're not there yet.
And that's where I think we need to cut it off at some point as well, because I don't think we're getting there unless we really see how the trade-offs are going to be. Because we can just theorize about so many different options that they could work, because your targeting system could definitely work. The taunting system, I want that anyway, right? Not caring about the assassin, because it will allow for gameplay on the PvE side of things. Loving that. But on a general basis, the real question is still, and that's why we got into this discussion, is why are assassins mad caca in comparison to others? Why are we not seeing it into the meta anymore whatsoever, only in side gimmicks? Whereas there are other builds that are continuously being used, uncreative, that can just blow everybody's mind, where it basically limits the overall gameplay of many classes and many other characters as well. And like you said, I think we touched upon a great topic today, and I think we need to just leave it, because we're just we're just gonna talk into circles for days on end. We're already like 1 hour and 20 minutes in, and we still don't have a solution. I feel like you said, we
turned this into a Twerams episode.
Yep. Man, like I can be ranting about stuff all day, man. I'm not necessarily creative, but I got the energy to do so. But man, I think we need to cut this one off. Car, you have any last things that you want to add to this one?
No, I don't. Besides, just wanting to add that special thank you to Exile and Dig Force for the pictures.
Yo, thanks so much, guys.
Down, you can see the credits for them.
Yep.
It's cut off on your screen right now.
Oh, is it? Let's see if I can pop it up if I hide my porn correctly. Here you go. So
but yeah, just a special thank you to them for helping me out getting these much more stylish images rather than stock photos I can find off the internet.
Great. So either way, Karu, on my side note, thank you so much for joining me. I saw, and I saw this with myself as well, that during the latter part of the podcast, we all got a little bit down because I felt like we both didn't really have the solution. And there could be so many things to be done, but there's no real answer as to what the actual solution is. And that is where hopefully Vespa draws a little bit creativity. And I would like you guys as viewers to put it down into the comments what you guys think about the current situation about Assassins, and what did you guys think about our suggestions on how to make this class progress, create an identity to come back into this game and be more playable. I would really like to hear the topics. Sorry?
I would like to add one more thing real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that I'm going to have mentioned for next week, or next podcast, might actually be able to help us a little more if we want to recycle some of the topics from today into that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I think, and I want to close this one out, the thing that makes a game great isn't necessarily complexity. Where if you try to make things simple, like look at Uno, it's not necessarily complex, but the way that it works is what gives the game identity. And by not necessarily adding like a lot of different mechanics could be the solution, which also seems like all the things that we've been ranting about, so might even be some sort of a disclaimer. But I wonder what you guys as people think and as players, and I hope what Vespa will do to the solution where I believe Assassins suck. And hopefully they will listen to this podcast just as they did with the NPCs where I make a video about them, because look at where the NPCs are standing now. That being said, thank you guys so much for joining. If you haven't already, make sure to like and sub, and I'll see you guys into the next one.